CJ hates these short little videos where I just talk to you guys because they might as well be tweets, but I don't have a Twitter, or at least like I have Twitter, but I have Twitter for like other things. Like it's not for entertainment, if that makes sense. Like I have one Twitter for Honey Shark, which is our online store that I never promote, and then I have a Twitter that I made that was supposed to be for doing sigils on Fiverr, but that hasn't really been a thing yet. Well, I mean, I've done sigils on Fiverr, but I haven't used the Twitter to promote the sigils that I do on Fiverr, if that makes sense. Speaking of sigils, I went to Downtown Storage in downtown Huntsville, which is kind of like the Low Mill. If you've never been to the Low Mill, imagine you have a bunch of independent artists who are trying to run their own businesses, and they all rent out a space where they have their own thing going on. I went there with Sophie and Gabby. You may remember Sophie from the Stars and Strikes Dynamo air hockey video that came up yesterday. If you haven't watched that, make sure to check that out. But we went down there to visit Asylum Comics, so we ended up just exploring for a little bit, and we found our way down to Glyph Place. My friend Ike had actually told me about it before, but I didn't know this is the place he was talking about. So glyphs and sigils are very similar, but not necessarily the same thing. A glyph is like a cultural symbol, so a glyph doesn't have to be magical necessarily, and then a sigil is a magical symbol. So the guy at the glyph place, he makes essentially sigils. He calls them glyphs. They're magical glyphs, but he also does like drawings of like people and characters. And one of the big things that he tries to push is that art is magic, like in its own way, anyways. So I go into the glyph place and I ask him like, "Hey, have you worked on any comic books? Do you have any plans to work on a comic book?" Because Grant Morrison, who's a comic book writer that I actually really like his work. I love what he did on Batman Incorporated, but he likes to make his books in hyper sigils, where the book itself is just like a massive magical symbol. And essentially, the way that he practices magic is by writing comic books, essentially, which is really interesting, right? Um, I also like what he did with Action Comics Superman in the New 52. That was pretty fresh. But Grant Morrison's work on the Invisibles, which was like a big hyper sigil that he did, inspired a lot of people to get into the idea of not only practicing chaos magic, but practicing chaos magic in the form of like a medium, like a book. Um, and I know there's a demand for that. There are people who want like the next Invisibles kind of thing. So I'm asking him not necessarily with the idea of like, hey, let's work together, but more of the idea of like, I would like to see that, especially from like a local artist. But he's like, I have a lot of free time right now. Yo, if you have like a script or something, like take a seat and we can like work on it. And I was like, oh shit, like because I didn't come here with like the intention of working on a book. And because I rode with a friend, like it's not like I could just sit there and it's like let's brainstorm, let's do this right now. But I had his business card, and we may or may not work on a book that'll be like a hyper sigil graphic novel kind of thing, or maybe just a single issue one shot story that has like a lot of magical elements in it, where the art is essentially just a hyper sigil. Like the whole book is just like a magical book. I think that would be really cool. Um, I think what I'll do is I'll hit him up with an email shortly, like right after I do this video. And in that email, I'll be like, hey, so how do you want to do it? Should it be like us just working together as friends so there is no money involved? Should it be a thing where it's like, hey, I could sell you a script? Because I do write on Fiverr, so I do have like rates for like how much I charge per 100 words and stuff like that. Should we work together, not charge either person anything, and it be a situation where we try to publish the book on Amazon, because I've published books on Amazon before. Um, my brain is like, how are we going to do it? It could very easily be a thing where when I hit him up and I ask him, like, so should we do the word rate thing where we charge for 100 words? He could hit me back up and be like, well, should I charge you for the art? Should it be like, should I charge you for this panel work? You know what I mean? And it's like, I wonder if they would balance each other out. Like if I tried to say like, hey, I'll sell you like a so many thousand word script for like so much money if he'd be like, well, I'd sell you my art for like this much money, and then in the end we would subtract the cost of one from the other, and one person would just pay the other person money. You know, like I don't know how that works. It's really interesting because I normally don't get approached by an illustrator ever, especially one that practices magic. So that's really cool. I'm excited. So I'm going to make sure to email them. Kratos asks on Discord, "Hey Nick, have you been able to watch my video yet?" No, Kratos, I haven't seen your video yet, but I do want to watch it. I think one reason why I haven't watched Kratos' new video, which you guys should check out on his YouTube channel, is because he wants me to try and play that game myself. But if I watch Kratos' gameplay, then I won't be surprised by the game if I play it myself, if that makes sense. Like, I would have already seen things about it from Kratos' video, and it would influence how I would do my own. So I'd rather do my own first, and then kind of react to the game naturally, and then maybe even do a reaction video to Kratos's to see how Kratos is doing in the game and like what his thoughts are. I think that would be interesting. Tell me what you think about that in the comment section below, everyone, including Kratos. Also, took a midterm today in management, and like no one feels good about that midterm at all. No one, which is really interesting. I ended up being one of the first people to finish up the midterm. It was multiple choice and true and false, but everything that we did was like list based, which is really crazy. It's 5 chapters of material put together, no previous test, so it's not like we've been tested on each chapter up to this point. We've only read each chapter up to this point. There's an in-class lecture, one for each chapter, and then there's a group assignment, one for each chapter. But the group assignment doesn't dive into the list for real. And everyone's like, what do you mean by list? So if you were to read the chapters for my management class, right? They have little chapter summaries. Well, they don't have chapter summaries. They have summaries spread throughout each chapter. So you read like a few pages, and then there'll be this block that says, "This is what you need to know," and then it summarizes it. So if you were to read all the blocks of what the book says, what you need to know, it won't cover things that are in the graphics in the book. So the book has images, and in these images, they just have list of things. It'll have like the title of a list, and it'll have a whole bunch of elements in that list, right? Um, and that's what she wants you to know. They're like the actual content of the chapters don't matter for real. It's the list. And that's what she always asks about. And then that's what you're tested on. Like, that's the midterms, like, even though it's not phrased as what list are you trying to remember, what is the correct element from the list, that's essentially what it is. Like, that's essentially what the questions are more or less asking. They'll be like, da-na-na, da-na-na-na-na, which element correctly corresponds with what's being talked about in what list, right? Um, and it's just kind of gross. We did a Jeopardy review game in order to get ready for the midterm, right? And in the Jeopardy review game, some questions were supposed to be harder than others, but when they're all like, name 3 elements from this list, I don't understand how some list would be harder or easier to remember than others, other than like length of list. Like, I imagine it's easier to remember a list of 3 things than it is to remember a list of like 15 to 30 things. And yes, some of the lists are really long. Some of them are like, it's not like you're learning like lists that have 5 elements each. But even then, if like each chapter had like 15 lists, and then you have 5 chapters, and then you have the midterm and it covers all the chapters, that's just a lot to remember and a lot to not to get confused. Um, Gabby even was like, she thinks she might have failed it. Libby, who's in our group, Libby said that she studied, felt confident, sits down to take the midterm, loses all confidence when she sits down, and then after she like starts the quiz, well, midterm, she's like, she feels like it's easier than she thought it was, but then she's like, she's not sure. She thinks it's easier because she's stupid. Like, those were her words. She's like, I'm not sure if I think it's easier because I'm stupid and I just don't know any better, or if it actually was easier than I thought it would be. Um, but yeah, I don't know how I did on that midterm, and it's worth like 25% of my grade. And I have 100 in that class right now. So if I was to fail it, I would drop to a 75. I would have a C in that class. My lowest grade right now, by the way, is a 93 in any of my classes. Um, Ballin'. But I mean, that could easily change when the Fire Nation attacks with this fucking midterm grade. Plans that I have for tonight, by the way, for you all. I want to do a Dueling Nexus video. Yesterday, when we did the Stars and Strikes videos, if you haven't seen those, make sure to check those out. A lot of people were like, "Yo, do Dueling Nexus. Yo, do Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is now Dueling Nexus." And I'm like, "What? Nani?" So I got to check that out. I actually haven't looked at that yet. Haven't watched any videos on it or anything like that. So I'm ready to do that. So thank you all for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like this video, favorite, comment, subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching. This is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black, the one and only. Log out and stay tuned for a Dueling Nexus stream. Peace.